This is the USA Emergency Broadcast Network, your source for reliable disaster preparedness information.
The views and opinions expressed on this program are not necessarily the views of this station, its management, sponsors, or other hosts. If you have any comments or suggestions about this program, please contact us at radio@usaebn.org. That's radio@usaebn.org.
Welcome to a new Zeta Report here on USA Emergency Broadcasting Network. We are live first Mondays of every month at 4 o'clock Central Time, 5 o'clock Eastern Time. Partnership between USAEBN and ZetaTalk.com. I'm pleased to welcome back to the show Nancy from Zeta Talk. Welcome back, Nancy.
Hey, hi. We're going to have fun tonight.
Yep.
We're going to talk about mythical creatures who mostly are not mythical at all, and real critters, which are similar, and what you should do if you encounter them. Like werewolves, the Wisconsin ManBear, wolves, grizzlies, the New Jersey Devil, dragons, T-Rex, Brontosaurus, crocodiles, wild boars, vampires, Mothman, Bigfoot, Bigfoot hybrids, Chupacabras, dog packs, and Cougars. And if you're still with us at the end of all of that, we'll try to talk about some of the recent earth changes. As usual, I'll read the disclaimer quickly. In partnership with USAEBN, Zeta Talk and the Zeta Report will be discussing the challenges of living on a planet beset with change, rising seas, increasing earthquakes and volcanic activity, weather gone wild, and the worry of what to do in a worst-case scenario. We will also inject Zeta Talk prophecy on what is coming next and advice on readiness plans and safe locations. Whenever Zeta Talk is quoted, please remember that prophecy is not fact. It is opinion. It only becomes fact when it happens. The Zetas are remarkably accurate, but have been wrong on occasion. Bear that in mind. For more information on this subject, please visit ZetaTalk.com or the Zeta Report on YouTube. Questions from the chat and issues raised in the chat will be addressed toward the end of the hour after the main feature has been presented. I want to start with werewolves. Are they real? Yes and no. Early in the Zeta Talk saga, the Zetas were asked about werewolves. These are humans infected with rabies, per the Zetas. Thus, this is resulting from the bite of another human so infected. That's why in the legends, you become a werewolf if you get bitten by one. What to do about rabid animals? Get your pets vaccinated, and if you encounter a rabid animal foaming at the mouth, do not challenge it. They are extremely irritable and fearless, so they'll attack without provocation. The movie Cujo is a graphic example. To quote Zeta Talk, the infected human first finds insidious changes setting in: irritability, snappishness. During the course of the disease, the afflicted human would become unkempt, hair and nails growing long, and in the final stages of the disease, madness and extreme irritability sets in, the man having become the wolf. Why does the legend tie the madness to the full moon? Even unaffected humans grow a bit wild during the full moon. Rabid victims often sought the quiet of the woods to soothe their hyper-irritable nerves. Thus the legend. Well, this is the only one who actually is not real. Werewolves are not humans that, grow teeth at the full moon and run around and then become human again. But amazingly so, after I was done compiling this whole list, I realized that everything I was talking about is real. And it's real today, alive, and, so to speak. So that, interesting, not so much mythical as seldom seen, perhaps. The Wisconsin bear wolf. It's called the bear wolf. It's really a bear that kind of stands up on its rear feet and has a snout that looks like a wolf, but is so shy, right? It's most likely a bear, and that's, although they don't have a body, that's what people have concluded. This is not a werewolf. The bear wolf is very shy. No photos exist, but there are drawings from the many sightings. Per a report from a Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources employee who was clearing dead deer from the road at night, he saw a huge 7-foot-tall hairy creature with pointy ears in his rear-view mirror. His flashing lights illuminated a huge hairy beast standing on its hind legs, dragging a deer off the open tailgate. The head looked like a cross between a bear and a wolf. A local tracker said he found some tracks of something that weighed several hundred pounds. Okay, unless you live in Wisconsin or Michigan, unlikely to encounter it. Treat it like a bear, very shy bear. They don't want you around and they'll leave, and you're okay. Wolves. Wolves need no introduction. They are indigenous in North America, the Arctic, and Eurasia. They hunt in packs and strike fear into the hearts of anyone in the woods hearing a pack howl. I have a personal story about a wolf-husky hybrid. I was in Alaska for a summer job as a teen at a resort. I go for long walks on my day off, accompanied by a wolf-husky hybrid whom I had been feeding with scraps from the kitchen. He was huge, 150 pounds. I was advised not to turn my back on him due to the wolf cross, but found he walked beside me where I could touch him at every step. I mean, I could literally reach out and touch him, no matter if we were climbing, scrambling up the rocks of a mountainside or what we were doing. There were grizzly in the area, and I knew he would tangle with an attacking grizzly bear, giving me time to climb a tree. So we were buddies, and I never had a bad vibe from him. But there was another time I was walking in a park in Atlanta, and somebody was coming through with their wolf hybrids, and they didn't know me. And I'm telling you, I just about fainted. I had a bad feeling about it. So if you're going to have a wolf, raise them from babies and feed them and be part of the pack. That's what my advice would be.
Hey, Nancy, can I jump in on that one?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, I saw, I think it was a news report, I think out of Colorado, that was on social media a couple of days ago. It was a photo of like maybe a 5-6-year-old little girl sitting on the couch with what looked to be a wolf puppy. But, you know, as a puppy, they're quite large animals and probably 75 pounds. Just sitting there on the couch with her, and the text from the mother to the father, "Oh, look, we found a new dog and it looks scared." That's you got. And the whole story is the text back from the husband is like, "Answer the phone now. That's not a dog." You know, you got to be careful when you're out walking around. A lot of animals will check you out, and especially if you've got something on you as far as food or whatever. If you're feeding them, they're going to come back. I know your experience is different than most, because when you run out of food, you become the food sometimes. You know, wild animals are wild, so even just be careful out there. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, and I think that's something that happens with packs. You know, if you have a single, it's different. In this case, I was probably the alpha female and he was the alpha male. You know, and there was no pack thing. But when we get to the section on wild dogs, I'll emphasize that it's where they become, there's pack instincts that arise up. And that's where, like, pit bull attacks and things like that, if you have one, it almost never happens. But if you have a bunch of them, you know. All righty.
Kind of like humans sometimes.
Yes, it could be, yes, driving each other. A pack of teenage boys, don't mess with it, right? Okay. Grizzlies, they can run 35 miles per hour, and as can many bears. They are not slow. Crocs, too, like 35 miles an hour. If anywhere near their young, leave. This is when they get aggressive and attack. And they are omnivores, and they will eat man. And I was told during my stint in Alaska not to run, but rather climb a tree. They said the weight of the grizzly, these branches can't hold up the weight of a grizzly. They're very big, and the branches will break off, and so it's trying to like shimmy up a pole, which they don't do. And so you're way up at the top of the tree, and they're at the bottom, and they just take off. Although when you see some of these movies, they lean against the tree and push until the tree, make it a substantial tree, not just some sapling. Okay, on my day off in Alaska, I would go visit some folks my age. And instead of going way down the highway and then coming back on a side road, which was like a 7-mile hike or something, I'd cut through the woods. And one time when I stepped over a log, I encountered this great big footprint, put my tennis shoe in it. It completely swallowed my tennis shoe, took a picture, and realized this had to be a grizzly because he jumped over the fallen log, right? Well, after that, I stuck to the road because that was a big, it would have taken my head off with one swipe. And I'm not kidding, When walking the highway, right, instead of taking a cut through the woods with my big wolf husky hybrid, a helicopter landed on the highway. And I was stunned, and he said, "Are you all right?" I said, "Well, I'm just taking a walk, But I realized this is what people up there did. They were far and few, between, because few and far between, because it was isolated, and if anybody was seen walking, you had to check and see, did their car break down? Did they need a lift? Nobody was left on their own. They were, checking in on each other all the time. Neighbors were. You don't get that in New York City. Everybody gets on the elevator and looks at the elevator ceiling, and nobody talks to each other. But out there, everybody talked to everybody because people were considered like precious, and you had to look out for each other. Different rules. Okay, the New Jersey, I wanted to say, bear meat makes a good barbecue, and I know this because at one point we had a young black bear that came, and it was sniffing around the resort because we cooked, and we blew the cooking fumes out, and he smelled all that and was coming around. Then the dogs were chasing the bear, and everybody was at the window watching this. And wait, here comes the bear chasing the dogs. And now the dogs, and back and forth. They were playful almost because it was a young bear. But down the road, they went on a bear hunt, got one, and had a black bear barbecue, and it was a big party. So bear will make a good barbecue, as will a lot of these predators. And my suggestion is, if you're in a region, like this is what the Zetas say about Alaska, if you get into a situation where it's bears and people, and it's one is going to eat the other, well, eat the bears, because they make a good barbecue. And that may, in fact, play out for Alaska if the earth changes predicted by the Zetas occur. If you get attacked by a bear, the recommendation is to curl up into a ball and play dead. They don't like to eat dead meat, rotting meat, and if you act dead, you're less likely to get eaten than if you show some life. So ignore that bite, just play dead, and maybe you'll make it through. The New Jersey Devil. This sounds like something that is definitely just an urban legend, but so many people have seen it, and it's even legendary way back, into Swedish explorers in the Pine Barrens of New Jersey. Those are like pine forests, and they call them the Pine Barrens. The mythical New Jersey Devil lives, and it appears to be real. Native American Indians call the Pine Barrens Papoosing, meaning place of the dragon. And you see a picture of it. It flies. It has like pterodactyl wings, without feathers. And it has what it looks like a horse face, and kind of hoof legs. Is this a weird kind of maybe it's a leftover dragon? Swedish explorers called it Drakekill, which Drake being a Swedish word for dragon, and kill meaning a channel or arm of the sea or river. So in other words, if you bring your ship up the river here in this area, you will see the dragon. Reports of sightings continue to this day, and some photos and video captures too. The devil has wings, an enormous wingspan, and a horse face. Could this be a leftover dragon from the days of the dragons? That'd be my guess. Dragons were real. They do not appear in pottery and paintings and legends from China to Europe because they were just a story. For the Zetas, they were a type of dinosaur brought to Earth by aliens, not the good kind, but the bad kind, trying to terrify mankind, as that would reap them a larger harvest of souls. Well, at this point, let me just discourse. According to the Zetas and other genuine channeled work, there's, young souls go in two directions. One is called service to other or good-hearted. Practice the golden rule. Give a darn about other people. At least 50% of the time you think about others, although being selfish 50% of the time doesn't make you a bad sort. You're expected to take care of yourself and worry and plan and all that kind of thing. But then if you don't grow up and you stay selfish like a little baby, crying and demanding everything immediately, you're service to self. And you're 95% of the time you're thinking about yourself, and only 5% of the time you kind of slip into empathy and say, and then you say, no, I'm going to have to toss that guy over the bridge because I just don't want to share my sandwich or whatever. So everybody knows these people. Most people turn out to be the good sort. They grow in that direction. And the 5% or so that do not ever grow up eventually have to be dragged off to prison planets during incarnations because that's it. They hoard, they're selfish, backstabbing, they lie, greedy, and we all know the type. They can be very pleasant. They can smile, charming. Many people that run corporations or climb the ladder by ripping off somebody else's work or backstabbing or whatever are service to self. Okay, so out there on the prison planet, they're very well contained, and they don't get to just run amok and mass land and colonize and eat people or whatever they might want to do. There are rules, but part of the rules are that they can come down and counsel people if people are interested in talking about that sort of thing. How do I get to be CEO of my company? I don't care who I have to kill. That type of thing. Whoops, you got the devil on one shoulder. But if you're asking for consultations to be good-hearted, how do I help my neighbors? They seem so burdened down right now. Whoops, you got the angel on the other shoulder. Service to self, service to other. But on these prison planets, they're always looking for recruits. And one way to get recruits is to terrify people, because when you're fearful, you're not thinking of other people. And then if they can terrify enough people for a long enough period, now you maybe have some service-to-self souls after they die that you can run off to your prison planet, and they can clean the toilets, or they can be low person on the ladder, so to speak. Okay, per the Zetas, these dragons did not breathe fire, but they had a very hot breath, and so therefore the people that were caught in front of them as they were roaring said, oh, it's like fire. What to do if you meet a real-life dragon? Draw your sword. What else could you do? All right, Tyrannosaurus rex. If dragons were a dinosaur, are our own very own Terran-born dinosaurs still alive? Yes. Very much so. T-Rex lives in the swamps of Arnhem Land, the Aboriginal Reserve in Upper Australia. It's way up there in the upper northeast corner. It's Aboriginal land, and it's just wild. It's swampy and has cliffs and the like, and nobody farms it or runs cattle ranches. It belongs to the Aboriginals. Okay, but every once in a while, cattle in the nearby ranches goes in there, and cowboys try to go after that cattle and shag them out. The Aboriginals call it the Brunajor. many eyewitness accounts of a 25-foot-high T-Rex carrying off cattle that wander into that reserve. It was bipedal and moved its tail from side to side when walking. Footprints have been recovered. What to do if you encounter a living T-Rex? Follow the lead of the Australian cowboys. Their horses and dogs would run away if they smelled. They would refuse to go into the brush if they smelled a T-Rex. They bolted. So, what would you do, Andre, if you encountered a T-Rex? Andre?
Well, I tell you, maybe the sword. Maybe the sword that time. Maybe I just go after it.
Yeah. Well, they could
Are
carry.
Are they good eating? Are
Carry,
T-Rex good on the barbecue?
You know, I don't know. When
That's
I get to talking about the Brontosaurus, it doesn't sound like it because anyone who ate the Brontosaurus that they killed in the Congo died. You know, so we don't know what kind of germs they had. I would probably say no, but you know, they didn't seem to leave their swampy area. They stayed there. They didn't, you know, they had a protective instinct and they probably ate things like maybe they ate crocodile, but they certainly ate any cattle that wandered in there because they had been seen with a big cow or bull or whatever in their mouth. You know, swaying off into the brush, and I did when I was researching this. There were drawings, but there were no photos, except there were photos of the big three-toed footprint, which was just huge. You know, it was from a man's waist to the top of his head. You know, that big. You know, not any little bitty thing. So they said somebody, kind of one of these like. Documentaries went down there and tried to encounter it or get film of it or something, and they never did. So apparently it's relatively shy, and maybe it's not real numerous, but it's definitely still alive. Okay, T-Rex is not the only one. In 1910, a New York Herald featured an article asking if the Brontosaurus was alive and well in the Congo. And when I put out my YouTube video documenting this hour, I've got photos of that, you know, of that newspaper article, and I'll include that. The natives report having once killed one, but all who ate of it died. The natives called it Django Nini, which meant giant diver. You know, it would dive into the rivers. Though supposedly an herbivore, it reportedly comes out of the water and devours people. Well, on the other hand, maybe it just came out of the water and was, you know, annoyed that people were poking at it and killed them. We just don't know. But it's supposed to be an herbivore. Brontosaurus. Looks just like the Brontosaurus. There are also credible scientific studies that dinosaurs were alive in Abambaro, Mexico. Mexico. That's sort of on the eastern side, now desert area, but that doesn't mean that it was desert in the past. Within the last, before Christ, 4,500 to 1,100 years ago. And the reason that they're dating that is that the villagers at the time there would model these little clay figures, bake them, and they showed dinosaurs rearing up on their hind legs, and what they were showing is various dinosaurs that modern man became aware of only because we've dug up all the bones and we've assembled, skeletons, and we've had them studied by biologists and the like who said, oh, this is clearly the jawbone for that thing, and named them and all that kind of thing. But these villagers back then had none of that information available to them. None. And yet, there they were modeling these dinosaurs. So, they were in Mexico also as recently as, what are we talking about, 1,500 years ago. What to do if the Earth changes disturb the habitats of sleeping dinosaur cells, as in, if you happen to be living in Africa and the Congo, and it comes wandering out of the Congo and, crunches through your village or whatever, my only suggestion would be to run. Crocodiles. Crocodiles can be rightly considered a dinosaur from the past. With climate changes, we should anticipate crocs migrating. They certainly do. Have you seen that movie, Lake Placid? There it is. It's a huge Asian crocodile. They showed it like 50 feet long. They do get huge, just huge. And they will go on the move. They'll swim up the Mississippi. I don't know about other countries, but why wouldn't they? Very aggressive. They don't worry about whether they have land rights or not. People in Florida report them. They're out there golfing, and here's a big croc, and they run fast. You don't just go up and take a picture because if a bear can run 35 miles an hour, so can a croc. And they'll bite you, and they drag you in the water, roll you round and around till you drown, tuck you under there somewhere till you tenderize, and come back and eat you later. So I have a clear understanding, since watching Lake Placid a number of times, their behavior is that they look like a floating log. They float up very slowly to shore, and all these wildebeest or whatever are just standing around having a drink, and then they lunge and snap, and that's the end of you. Okay, what to do? They taste like chicken, I've heard. In the southern states, they go on croc hunts unless they're considered an endangered animal, and why would anyone do that? But just like the bears, if you find, due to earth changes and cataclysmic situations where there's not enough to eat and the climate has changed and the roads are all torn up or whatever, kill the bear and make a barbecue. Kill the crocs and roast them too, because they're entirely edible, and why not? Kill them before they kill you. That's my advice. Wild boars, wild pigs. You hear about these stories about, Texas is on a wild boar hunt, and they're all out there shooting everything that they can see that looks like a wild boar, as they should, because these guys get huge. And pigs anyway can get really huge. It's not like you stand next to them and put your hand. They're as big as an obese man, on the hoof, and they will eat people. Every once in a while there's a crime show talking about killed so and so and fed it to the pigs, and and yes, so they. Is this something that just shows up here and there? Oh, you have wild? No. Guess what? Your domesticated pigs will turn into wild boars if allowed to breed without supervision. This is in the genetics, and this is why apparently pig farmers are aware of this. If they see any kind of sign that wild boar genes are emerging again, they don't let that sow or that boar breed. They stop it right there. And I don't know what else they do, but basically, if you have wild pigs that get loose, after a couple of generations, you're beginning to see the wild boar come out, the big tusks, the wiry hair, and the very aggressive behavior, right? Why are pigs and wild boars found worldwide? Well, because it's a good food source. Pigs will eat practically anything. They always talk about the farmers slopping the pigs. They're as intelligent as a dog, but you go out there and you throw whatever is left over from the dinner, into the bin, and here come the pigs. So, and they root around in the ground and eat whatever might be half buried, and so therefore, you can get all this meat, pork meat, pretty inexpensively, and so people keep chickens and they keep pigs because it's easy to keep domestic animal. So, and they're taken places, around the South Seas and around the world, wherever man colonized, got in a boat and went, or got on the hoof or whatever. They took pigs and chickens with them, and that's why we have pigs all over the world. Okay. Once again, with the wild boar, like with the crocs and the bears, if you're in that kind of a situation, kill them and eat them. They make a good pig. Pig roasts are great, right? All right, vampires. Now, this has got to be a legend, huh? But no, it's real. It's like the dragons, very, very well documented in all, not just from, Eastern Europe, etc. Not just, the vampire legend is partially true. It's one of these things like the werewolves where there was a rational explanation, but it got fanned into, well, that guy's a werewolf, and in the full moon he'll spring teeth and then her fur, and then he goes back to being human. But that part is legendary. Just so with the vampires, too, there's a lot of stuff that wrapped around the true story. And the true story is, once again, these aliens from elsewhere trying to reap a good harvest on Earth of souls that were very selfish, thinking of themselves, so they could be taken off to the prison planets and clean the toilets and be low man on the ladder, brought large bats to Earth and to terrify people. And they were bats that had hairless faces. Now, we have creatures like that. We have bats like that. We also have monkeys that have hairless faces. And so, therefore, people, when they looked at them, they thought, oh, that's a man, because big dark eyes, hairless face, and that type of thing. And they would think only of themselves, and these bats would fly off and come in, and these large bats were chosen because of that bare face. They looked semi-human. What about the part about vampires being killed with a stake through the heart? Well, here's what the Zetas say about where that part of the legend came from. And I quote Zeta Talk. Were they found and killed with stakes? They were killed with whatever was at hand when discovered in their dark lairs. And what was mostly at hand were wooden sticks. Farmers staking fence posts would use the pointed ends to fend off attacks from wild animals. And so if they saw one of these guys flying around, they would chase it with these stakes and go into whatever cave or wherever it was, So the dragons didn't last too long because they weren't native to America. These bats were not native to America, or native to the world, our world. So therefore, they die out, from, well, they're not resistant to all the virus and bacteria that we have here, et cetera, et cetera. They probably get a tummy ache from eating the native fauna and flora. So, not being native, they die out. Although the dragons were, I'm sure, killed also by knights, in their suit of armor and their swords going off to slay the dragon or whatever. But mostly they died because they weren't indigenous to the earth, and it wasn't a hospitable place. Okay, Mothman. So, there's movies made of this one too, Mothman. Are the days of vampires over? Well, it would seem the same tricks are being pulled on mankind as of this last century, as of these last few years. The Mothman legend, taking place in West Virginia in 1966, within this past century, has a similar type of creature, large bird, red eyes, bad vibe. But no one was killed. Did you notice, in the Mothman prophecy, there was apparently a suicide, but they didn't get eaten, nobody, And when we get to talking about the Chupacabra, I'll emphasize that too. They do not kill people because they are not allowed to. When these service-to-self aliens are allowed to bring creatures to Earth and terrify man, they are not allowed to kill and eat man. It's drawn at a psychological line. You can do psychological counseling, the devil on one shoulder and the angel on another. You can terrify people, but you cannot mass land, colonize, eat people, whatever. There are definite rules in place. And by the way, for those people that want to know about that, go read the Zeta Talk site. It gets very specific. Okay. So Mothman, per the Zetas, these were type scare games. Again, what do you do if you are being plagued for some reason by, the bad aliens? Let's put it that way. Now, in general, you called it on yourself because you don't get this kind of an attention unless you yourself have been mulling over, asking the devil to come and sit on one shoulder and murmur in your ear. What you have to do is just say no. Those are the rules. These aliens coming from elsewhere to consult with you, They can't do anything. They can't come down and suggest that you get on their spaceship or anything. If you just say no, you can shoo them away, believe me. And Zeta Talk has made a big deal of this when our saga first started in 1995. Just say no. Those are the rules. They have to leave. They cannot bug you if you have rejected their consultation. Okay, there was also a dark, bird-like creature called a brujas in Monterrey, Mexico recently. And I mean, like, just in the last 5 years or something. It had glowing red eyes, a similar appearance to the Mothman, and those seeing these brujas, including policemen, have sketched pictures and appeared on TV in Mexico. So this is Mothman is recent in West Virginia and Monterrey, Mexico. So you might get it in your town too, but remember, just say no. I don't want you. Leave. Bigfoot. Bigfoot is very real despite only fleeting glimpses and footprints as proof. A thoroughly analyzed video of a 1994 Washington state sighting shows these are not men in suits. They walk with a rise and fall, unlike man who merely strides. So people have done analysis of these videos and photos, and some are fakes, but the ones that aren't, emerge. The trapezius shoulder muscles can be seen moving under the skin of this video, just behind the head. And per the Zetas, they are a version of early man and protected from humans who would not hunt them. Man would hunt them. And they do. They do. I mean, you watch these Bigfoot series on the TV, and they're getting their guns, and they go out, and they want to shoot one, and they're going to mount it and hang it on their wall. And, the aggressiveness is not in Bigfoot. The aggressiveness is in man. So they are being protected because they have souls and because they were, apparently, according to the Zetas, were transplanted to Earth from another world. They're like star children in a way. And the agreement was that they would be shielded from emerging man who can be a hothead and very cruel. We can be very cruel. Okay, these are old souls then, like star children. Bigfoot is a gentle creature. It's there. Nobody really has a story of I was attacked by Bigfoot, right? We don't have that. And this is what the Zetas say, and I quote, "These entities have been placed into a primitive condition at their request so they can return to a basic understanding of how to get along with each other, with nature, and ponder the wondrous workings of nature. Their quarantine is not an exile, it is a search for peace." I think is so pretty. And there's a movie out called Harry and the Hendricks, and it's about a family that accidentally knocks a Bigfoot down and has to bring it home because it's injured, and they can't just leave it in the road, and it's just charming, and they all become friends, and it shows this gentle nature and the people saying, "Where's my gun? I've got to shoot me one of them." So, Andrew, what would you do if you encountered a Bigfoot?
Well, since they're nice, I'd probably say hello. I don't know if they speak the same language as we do, but I would try to get a photo, first of all, and then I would run.
Yeah.
I see a common theme here with these mythical creatures that are actually real critters is just run or go up a tree. But I think the Bigfoot can probably climb trees, so I'm saying get a photo for Zeta Talk website and then run.
Yeah. I think they're very telepathic. I'm going to talk to. We have a couple of examples of human Bigfoot hybrids. Where some woman was Indian woman or whatever, from a village, was wandering around in picking mushrooms or whatever. And perhaps it was her time of the month, she was estrus and, she smelled just right and she didn't necessarily turn them away, and she said, okay, we'll do a quickie here, or maybe she fainted, who knows, but offspring, and apparently, and the West Coast Indians had a number of stories, and they say usually these children do not live, but in a couple of cases they did, and one in China, one in the Caucasus Mountains, and in the reports, they're pretty telepathic. They don't speak well, or they don't speak at all, the hybrids, but they always won at poker. They won at poker because they knew what the other guy's hand was. So, based on that, I would try not to give them a subtle come on, waggle my rear or whatever. I would basically just send loving vibes, And my story of if something is not aggressive, that no need to panic. And the place where I found the big grizzly footprint, one time I was walking through, and I encountered a moose. I didn't have the dog with me, the dog wolf, and this wasn't a bull moose. It was a female at the far end of the clearing, and I froze, and the moose froze, and what seemed like centuries passed, and neither one of us was going to charge the other, right? And we were just standing there staring at it. So I gradually raised my camera, took a quiet picture, and then ever so slowly in slow motion, I turned to the left and started walking, and ever so slowly the female moose turned to the right and started walking, and we both just went off on our way. But the signals that we were giving each other was, I am not going to charge you, I'm not going to hurt you, I'm not afraid of you, and if you give the right signals, you're okay. Hybrids. Bigfoot human hybrids. Do they exist? Oh, yes, they do. Most of these babies die in early life, as I said, from reports of the West Coast Indians. And I suppose it's because the DNA didn't necessarily mesh quite right, But a few have survived. One Bigfoot, Zana, is of record in the Caucasus Mountains of Russia. Was kept in a cage and bred as a type of sex show. The guy that owned her would encourage people to come from the bar, and I don't need to go on. You can imagine, And so she had children, most of which died, but one of her sons, Quit, is also of record. And they dug up his grave and checked his bones. He had a jutting lower jaw and a squat head, as can clearly be seen in his skull, and there are stories of his exceptional strength. Okay. So, if you suspect your neighbor might be a Bigfoot hybrid, is he a lowbrow? Does he have exceptional strength? Does he always win at poker? There are a record among the American Indians of the West Coast, too. The story
Nancy,
of one such... Yes?
The way you're describing it there,
yeah.
Neighbor, I'm thinking like an old roommate. An old roommate was like that lowbrow, not cheated at poker, but always won at poker. And yeah.
Well.
Squad head.
Where did he come?
Yeah. Exceptional strength in regards to drinking. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. Yeah. I mean... we talk about the Anunnaki being real, and there are Anunnaki hybrids. And there are, like the story of David and Goliath, according to the Zetas. Goliath was a full-blood Anunnaki, and they are like 8 foot tall and, at least 50% more massive and strong than the average man. And David was a human Anunnaki hybrid, so he was not quite as large and strong as Goliath. But there are people on Earth who have Anunnaki genes, and down in Patagonia, there's some really tall tribe that has been caught on film by people just stunned at how tall they're, like 7 foot or more tall, and these are Anunnaki hybrids that sort of went native and went off, and then there's others around Tibet where they find the mummy's 7 foot tall woman, the lower jaw very narrow and pointed, which the Anunnaki jaws are, and the teeth were the small teeth in the bottom of the mouth, in front of the mouth, sideways. It wasn't just a dental thing of crowded teeth. They were just lined up sideways, very curious. And you find these high cheekbones of the Anunnaki up in the Mongols and Mongolia. So there are cases of hybrids that once the DNA gets in there, according to the Zetas, an Anunnaki hybrid will have a quick tendency to flash to anger, and once they get angry, they don't cool down very readily. And I'm sure most of us know people like that, too. Okay, so hybrids. And now, let's see, American Indians. Okay, one such hybrid of the American Indians on the West Coast, he was called Patrick. It's well documented by those who knew him. He was intelligent and became a ranch owner. He was the guy that was telepathic and knew the hands of others at poker. He died at the age of 30. This is another thing that's coming out with these hybrids. They're not long-lived. He died at 30, but as I understand it, he actually had his own ranch, had a wife, had children, and I don't think he talked well. I think that seems to be characteristic of these Bigfoot human hybrids. And then there was one in China who could understand language but could not speak and died at 33 years of age. 30, 33. They're not long-lived. I don't think the mixing of the DNA works too good. They may be prone to diseases or so. Bigfoot DNA may be within the human genome because, according to the Zetas, they're a version of early man that was stopped rather than moved along and genetically engineered. And okay, now we've got modern man, and Neanderthal has to be phased out. It can't digest all the foods it needs to. And okay, now we got the versions of modern man, and where's the missing link? And of course, we were genetically engineered. That's where the missing link went. But they kept one of them for Bigfoot, and so therefore, which one? Well, some theories are that Bigfoot is a leftover from the ape from Gigantopithecus, which is an Asian early man variety ape, and those bones can be found in Asia, and they do look similar. Big, lowbrow, real strong. There you go. What about Chupacabra? This is supposedly a mythological creature. It was the goat sucker, and people in South America and in the Caribbean islands and up through Central America. It looks like a dog, but it's hairless, and it has funny teeth that dogs don't have. And it's springy enough that it almost looks like it could be a kangaroo instead of a dog, big, strong. And then if it attacks, and you hear the squawking in the chicken yard, drained of blood. The goats and the chickens would be drained of blood rather than eaten. Okay, and they would see something else that was their handlers on occasion that looked a little reptilian. And the Zetas explained that is because, once again, these are brought down to terrify man. They're not to harm man, but just to scare him. And that because that's the rules, they have to run around and blowing their dog whistle or whatever the heck they do to bring the dog packs under control. And if they fail to cloak themselves, and they're not supposed to show themselves to humans because we don't see that much of aliens' conscious contact except like the Peru blue alien and a few things like that, that are timed for awakening of mankind to know that aliens really do exist. So, but under normal circumstances, we're not supposed to have a memory of what aliens look like. They come down and chat with you. You may feel differently. You feel that something happened. You may have an odd scar. You may have missing time. You don't remember what they look like and then you wonder if it was real or not and draw pictures or whatever. So, okay. So sometimes people see the Chupa handlers, but mostly it's the Chupas. And it was a failed campaign. They've stopped running it because the bad guys are losing out, and the Earth is in a transformation. And we're getting more and more democracies and more sharing of goods and less war and taking advantage of each other and that kind of thing. And consequently, so the bad guys, the selfish aliens, went off and said, "Sorry, Master, I couldn't do any better, but nobody's paying attention to us anymore." And they didn't necessarily collect all of their dog packs. So these poor little chupas run around, and they're not native to Earth, and they don't do very well. And some of these young chupas are found, like in the American Southwest. People say, well, what is it? Oh, it's a dog that died of mange, or that kind of thing. I remember there was one woman in Texas that sent away, I think she was a vet or something, for a DNA test. We never heard what the results were, because, of course, it showed that it wasn't a coyote or a dog with mange or all these other theories, But Chupacabra is real. You're not likely to find one. I think they are kind of spread around in the American Southwest, but again, they're dying out because they're not native. And what to do if you find one? Well, I don't really think you have to worry, because it seems as if they can't get you down to where they've got their, they've killed you and they can sip the blood as it drains out of your throat or something. They're not interested in you. There are no reports of a chupa attacking people. That's it. Okay. Dog packs. Now, dog packs, on the other hand, are very real. And once again, where we domesticate dogs and cats and the like, those instincts are still in there. And you say, well, my little Fluffy would never turn on me, and probably not. But if you weren't around and little Fluffy was running around and hungry and joined a dog pack, maybe they would, run off with somebody else's child or whatever, because there's a pack logic, a pack psychology that's in there, and there are reports of this kind of thing. I remember some from the state of Georgia. There was a woman that was, I think she was out walking, and a dog pack attacked her, and I think she died, but it was documented that that's what happened. And Dallas, Texas had a problem with strays. There was a woman, I think it was the Dallas situation. She was putting food out. She was feeding them. She assumed that they loved her, right? And that was it. And they attacked her, and it was just usually elderly people out walking or jogging or something like that, something where they feel strong enough to take them down. The dog is not that far from the wolf. Some dogs, like German Shepherds and Huskies, and they have this little bump in the middle of their forehead, which wolves also have, and that is indicative that they have not been domesticated that long, but they can also be really loyal, and because they consider you part of the pack, and frankly, when I was raising chickens, I had that same experience with roosters, that if you raise them from little bitty on to be and you pick them up and you hold them and pet them and they follow you around, they think of you as part of the flock, and they don't attack. But if that's not the case, heaven help you, because there's nothing that hurts more than having a rooster jump up and strike you in the kneecap with those talons. I'm telling you. I used to walk around with a garbage can lid, just to prevent that. Very painful. So, that's domestication, and dog packs you have to worry about that. And if we have cataclysmic changes, and there's a lot of pets that are wandering around because people have gone off and left them, or their owners died, or their owners couldn't feed them and chased them away, or whatever, don't assume that these are pets. You may have pack logic going on there, right, Andre?
Yeah, that's it's one of those things too. Similar to the wild boar situation. The reason why they form packs is for survival and to scurry up food, and there's strength in numbers, but also that's the way they live, and the wolf culture is all about packs because of those same reasons, and that's bred into the animal. As long as you domesticate them, that's fine, but eventually they're going to revert back to what's naturally in their DNA.
Yes, exactly. And I just glanced at the clock, and we were going to talk about various things if we had time, and I don't think we will. My last warning is about cougars. The cats are too little to snag you, right?
The feline, the animal cougar, right, Nancy? Not the cougar at the bar.
Oh yeah, not you're 15
Okay.
years younger
Okay.
than me. Come home with me, honey. No, not that kind of a
No.
cougar at all.
All right.
No, and all these big cats, jaguars and lions and tigers, and they're fearsome. And they absolutely consider man food. Well, cougars are usually very shy, and they stay away from you because they know man carries guns and stuff like that. My experience with cougars is when I lived in California and we had a drought, and the cougars would come out of the hills down to the swimming pools for a drink. They were just dying for something. They could go to the ocean, but that's salt water, etc. So people would look out into their backyard, and there was a cougar, drinking out of their swimming pool, and the deer would come there too, and so that was an attractant, and they would come, and here come the cougars hunting the deer. Well, I used to walk in the redwoods all the time, and just beautiful, beautiful trails, and they were warning us, beware of, what you should do is carry a can with rocks in it and go, or something like that. You had to make noise and clear your throat and bing a bell or something, because the cougar would run off, but then you'd hear these stories. And there was one guy up in Marin County who his dog was tangling with a cougar in the backyard, and he went around to help, and he lost his thumb, but the one that really scared me was a guy down in Santa Cruz where they had a university, and he went out jogging, along a country road, dirt road, and he heard what he thought was a scream, and he looked to the side, and of course these cougars, they don't mew, they scream, and he saw this cougar keeping pace with he and his dog, running parallel. Well, what was that all about? I mean, he was being hunted. Oh, I thought, oh my Lord. And they were giving reports that the students were finding dead deer behind, the dorms in the woods, half eaten. So they were right there. And after that, I just stopped walking in the redwoods.
Wow,
I wasn't going to encounter a cougar. And we do have them in Wisconsin too, just fairly nearby. There was a motion-activated camera, and there he is. So, and we have wolves. One was killed in Madison, and outskirts of Madison, but in the traffic. It was a young wolf, male. They run off and seek new territory. So here we are.
Well,
Fortunately,
part of that
we
too.
have a lot of deer.
Part of that too, Nancy, with the what's been called global warming, but we know the actual truth. We call it earth changes, with the different areas that these animals live and breed, and that's their territory, with either overdevelopment or temperatures and climate being changed for that area, that they are moving to migrating to different places. So you'll see the leopard or the cougar, which is normally a warmer weather animal, such as California, Georgia, that sort of region of the country, moving north. And then also with that, too, you're seeing a lot of wolves moving south from the tundra or the northern climes looking for food because food is getting scarce. That, when you have the combination of an animal that is hungry and desperate and out of its climate and its normal area of operation, and you just walking up to it, you need to make a decision pretty quickly. And what we've seen as a common theme through this episode is, don't try to attack it or show that you're bigger than it, because a lot of times that's an aggressive move, and it's going to be reflected with an aggressive move on their part. So
however,
don't stand up
there's
with
an exception.
these things.
That's mostly true, but with cougars, it's the opposite. I was surprised because they were advising, if you do encounter one, and there you are, open your raincoat or your jacket, look big, and do not turn your back on it, and do not run. In other words, you're trying to make yourself look larger. Now, that's not necessarily an aggressive move. That's just saying, see, I'm large. But that they don't say that about bears. They say curl up and look dead. And I don't know. What's the advice with wolves? I've never heard. I've watched a lot of wolves.
I think with wolves too, it's keep your distance, because
Yeah.
If they're not in a pack, they're probably just out on just on a scout or search for food. But if they are in a pack, it's a good thing to get, not necessarily run, but stay. If you'll see them from a while away, hopefully. Again, making noise though too, and having a noisemaker on you throws off their whole game. So
they don't know what to make of it. Yeah, and I think climbing a tree might work with wolves. I know a lot of animals, if it's a noise that they can't figure out. And I way back when I was a teenager, I came to Madison, for some class in the summer, and I was walking around the ag area where they had barns and animals, and a cow had gotten out and was jogging down the dirt road being chased by this poor student who was miles behind. And I thought, well, he's going to never catch it, So I stepped in front of the cow, which was, of course, what are they, half a ton or whatever. And I just waved my arms and made weird noises, right? And the cow stopped, lowered its head, looked, and then he would say, well, I'm going to try to get around on the right side, and I would step to the right and, and wave my hand. Meanwhile, the guy's running up, panting behind, and manages to get a rope around the neck of this thing and said, thank you. So, they don't know what to make of the noises or whatever, and whatever, but it's different. The psychology is different, I think. So, anyway, I hope I've helped, bringing these subjects up, because people don't think about it. Who thinks about meeting a grizzly or a wolf pack or all this, a dog pack? Or,
I know we didn't get to the major Earth changes talk today, but as you see the progression of Earth changes, whether that be wildfires, earthquakes, or inundation, flooding, that sort of thing, as those progress, these animals are creatures of legend that are actually real, as we pointed out today. As their habitat, they'll be moving to where the humans are, because that's where we are. And if we're low on food and they're low on food, then we have a standoff situation. So it's best to know sort of what's going on out there, what's myth and legend, and why there are myths and legends. It's usually because it's been experienced by the collective before, the collective consciousness of humans. See how I brought that all together, Nancy?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, very cleverly. Yes. Very well done.
I want to thank you again, Nancy, for coming on the show. And again, we will have more pictures and more information put up in the next coming days on the YouTube version of the Zeta Report, and also the newsletter on the poleshift.ning.com, and also zetatalk.com, the weekly newsletter. And Nancy, if you want to just give a little couple of hints of what's going on over there, that'd be great.
Yeah, we're having increased earth changes, increased earthquakes, and the like. The wobble has gotten more severe, jerking back and forth, and this is being very muted. Where the public is not being told this. You go to the earthquake sites, these earthquakes disappear faster than you can actually notice that they happened. And they're dumbing down the magnitude like crazy. Meanwhile, where we're trying to get an admission that Nibiru is in the inner solar system with the prongs, we seem to have just halted on that. And my theory is that we're waiting for Trump to get into the White House before the Council of Worlds unleashes the earth changes that would be happening anyway. They have their foot on the brake very much. They're preventing the New Madrid from ripping, and some of these things that are going to happen, they must happen, because the passage of Nibiru is a natural event, and it's not put off forever. It's just slowed down a little bit, our earth changes, but until people know what's happening and can somehow categorize why these earth changes are happening and what this means for their spiritual development. Remember, share the barter system, be the good person. It's not this incarnation that's so important as the quality of your soul. You grow your soul by helping other people, and that's what it's all about. Yep.
Exactly, and for more information on that, please check out zetatalk.com, or for more information on Earth changes specifically, and also sightings and different reports of, moon swirls, odd phenomenon in the sky, exoplanets. They're not really extra; they're part of our solar system. That's what I try to tell people. But You know, they weren't around 3,600 years ago to see it, so that's why we have to connect the dots here. And I appreciate your help with that, Nancy, as well.
Yeah, and you too, Andre. You too. Thank you for the show.
Excellent. And that's all the time we have for this episode of the Zeta Report. You can catch the podcast of this also on our Spreaker.com site. YouTube Zeta Report will be out with more photos and information, and always check out our main site, usaebn.org. Stay safe, everybody.